All right, good evening, everyone. I'm just going to turn my volume up a little bit. My name is Catherine from SEB Housing, and this is the information session for the 49 affordable rental units at the Wright in Waltham. And the purpose of this session is to give a little bit of background information on the affordable units. We're also going to discuss the application and the lottery process, what to expect after the lottery. If you have any questions during this session, you're encouraged to either type them into the chat in Zoom, or I'll be stopping at certain points during the presentation as well to ask if anybody has any questions. You were muted when you came into the meeting. So if you need to ask a question, you'll need to unmute yourself and then just go ahead and put yourself back on mute so we can minimize any outside noise during the presentation. So you also received a message when you came into this meeting that the session is being recorded. It's going to be available to view afterwards on SEB Housing's YouTube channel after tonight. So just a heads up again on that. And if you have any questions for us after tonight that you maybe forgot to ask, the easiest way to get in touch with us after tonight about the Wright or any questions you have on the process is by emailing info@sebhousing.com, or you can give us a call. So I'm going to put that information for you into the chat just so everybody has that in here. So that's our email address. Easiest way to get in touch with us. If you prefer to call, you may do that as well. And again, this is just for any questions you might have after tonight that you maybe don't think of as we're in the session. So just for some background information on who we are. So SEB Housing, we're an off-site affordable housing consulting group. So we're not the on-site management team for the building. We've been hired by the developer, the development team, to market the affordable units, conduct this information session, and then collect and review applications from applicants for the Wright in order to eventually run the lottery. So in the initial phases of this process, we're going to be your main point of contact rather than the management or leasing office at the Wright. But then further along in the process, the on-site management team will take over as your main point of contact for these units. So there are a few steps in the process, and the first is to apply for the lottery and be found eligible for the affordable housing program. And SEB Housing, we will be reviewing your application, your lottery application, and determining whether or not the preliminary information that you've listed there qualifies you for the affordable housing program. If it does, you'll be entered into the lottery. Any questions you have during this process, you would want to direct to SEB Housing. The second step in the process would be when you are in contact with the leasing office. So the leasing office at the Wright, their screening criteria and eligibilities are separate from the screening at SEB Housing. It's going to include, a credit check, background check, rental history, that sort of thing. All of the checks will be the same as what they do for market rate applicants. And then the third step in the process is once you are approved by the management and leasing office, you've been found lease eligible, you're going to then be directed back to SEB Housing, and we're going to ask you at that point, if you're one of the top households on the waiting list following the lottery, we're going to ask you to provide the verification of income, assets, and other information that you've listed on your lottery application. So as of right now, you haven't submitted any of that supporting documentation. You've just filled out the application and self-reported what your income, assets, and information is. So we'll be gathering that information after the lottery for the top households. So we're going to go into detail about all of that tonight. If there's any upfront questions, I just want to pause there to make sure nobody's having any issues with hearing me or seeing the screen if you're on Zoom. All right. So how do you apply? If you haven't already, you should check out our website, sebhousing.com. If you click on housing opportunities, you're going to select I want to rent, and then there's a page for the Wright. So you would then select the Wright. you'll be taken to a page specific to this property, and it's going to have a downloadable PDF version of the application and the information packet. The information packet contains most of the material I'll be covering during this session tonight, but I'm not going to have time to cover everything that's in there, so I'll just be reviewing the main points. And for that reason, we always suggest that you take a look at that information packet if you're interested in this opportunity, even if you have attended this information session. So if you do choose to apply for one of the units at the Wright, you're going to first need to complete that lottery application that you see listed online. You can submit that to us in one of several ways. So you can send it by email or scan it to us, and that would be at info@sebhousing.com. You can submit it to us that way. You can fax it to us. Our fax number is on the first page of the application. You can send it by regular mail to our office in Needham, and all this information is on the first page as well. And you can also drop it off in our 24-hour drop box located at our office in Needham. The address is 257 Hillside Ave. We do check that drop box daily. It's secure. Whichever one of those options works best for you, you can go ahead and submit your application that way. So we encourage you to get your lottery application in early. It is fairly brief since there aren't any supporting documents at this point. It should really only take you about 10 minutes to complete. But that supporting documentation will be needed following the lottery from the top household. So applications are due by October 24th. So just a little bit under a month away now. And they must be delivered by that date in order to be considered for the lottery. You don't need to be a resident of Waltham to apply for the lottery. There are several units that do have local preference for residents of Waltham, but you should not be discouraged from applying because of that. So we're going to discuss a little bit more about local preference later on as well. So right up front, I do want to mention that we've been made aware of a little bit of a delay in the construction of the Wright. So on our materials, on our marketing materials, we had mentioned that the units, the affordable units would be available in the winter of 2022, 2023, so within the next few months. And this may be pushed out a little bit to late winter or early spring. We've been told February or March, everything, or by the middle or the end of March, all of the construction should be finalized. So that's still winter, but you know, just to err on the side of caution there a little bit, all of the units may not be available until you know, March or April. We are anticipating that some of the units will be available before then, so late January into February, but just wanted to let you know that. This could mean that and it probably will mean that following the lottery, which is in November, we're going to delay requesting income, asset, and tax information from you until the Wright's leasing office is ready to move forward. And so we'll be letting you know about all that during or after the lottery, but I just wanted to say that up front because I know this has been a popular lottery. So I wanted to make sure everybody's aware of that. There might be a little bit of a lag time, a month or so, but you can still expect these units to be ready for lease up by early 2023. They have a website, and it is the Wright Waltham.com. So if you haven't checked that out, that might be helpful to you as well. And I've listed the link here on your screen, but they have a little bit more information there that I won't be sharing tonight, but you know, details about amenities we'll go over a little bit, but they have more information on their site. Also, the floor plans are on there for each of the unit sizes, so check that out if you haven't already. So just to give you some more information on the Wright. So the Wright is going to be a brand new rental community in Waltham, and it's going to feature a total of 195 apartments over 5 stories. And there are a number of amenities that are going to be included, including a landscaped private courtyard with grilling stations, a heated pool, a fitness center, a club room, and multiple lounges. There's also going to be private parking for residents, and the units at the Wright are going to have first-class finishes and in-unit laundry. 49 of the units are going to, in the development, are going to be made available through this lottery process. And they're going to be rented to households that have incomes at or below either 60% of the area median income or 80% of the area median income. So there's two income tiers or ranges in this community. So we're going to talk more about that as well. There are affordable studio, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom units being offered at both of those 60% AMI and 80% AMI income tiers. To give you the breakdown, it's on your screen now too, but there are 5 studio units, 5 total studio units at 569 square feet. And the 60% area median income studio units will be renting for $1,347. And the 80% of AMI studio units will be renting for $1,831. There's going to be 19 1-bedroom affordable units at the Wright, and they all contain 685 square feet. The 60% AMI 1-bedrooms will rent for $1,435, and the 80% AMI 1-bedroom units are going to rent for $1,954. Of those 1-bedroom 80% units, there is 1 disabled accessible and also 1 unit that is built out for persons with hearing impairment. So households who require those features of those 2 units are going to have priority on the waiting list for those 2 units. Those are the only accessible units, accessible affordable units, the 1-bedroom, the 2 1-bedrooms that I just mentioned. There's also 20 2-bedroom units in total for affordables, and they contain 1,125 square feet. The 60% AMI 2-bedroom units are going to rent for $1,689, and the 80% 2-bedrooms are going to rent for $2,313. There's 5 3-bedroom units, and they're all 1,400 square feet. And the 60% AMI units are going to rent for the 33 bedroom, units are going to rent for $1,897, and the 80% 3-bedroom units are going to rent for $2,618. So when I'm saying AMI again, I just want to reiterate that means area median income. So if your income is at or below 60% of the area median income, which is an amount that I'm going to share with you in just a few minutes, you're going to qualify for the 60% unit. And if your income is between, the 60% and 80%, then you're going to qualify for the 80% unit. And I'll show you those figures, like I said, in just a few minutes. So this is the affordable rent. The affordable rents that I just mentioned, or that I just listed, and they're also on your screen. It's not set in accordance with an applicant's income or financial circumstances. So the rent is not going to change based on your income. It's not subsidized housing in that way. And for this program, the rents are set using a formula that's based on HUD, so Housing and Urban Development's area median income, or the AMI for the Boston, Cambridge, Quincy area, which is where Waltham falls. The rent may increase once per year, and this typically occurs around the time that HUD revises their AMIs, which usually happens in April each year. There's always advance notice given to tenants whenever a rent increase is occurring, and it usually increases no more than about $25 to $75. So it's usually a pretty modest increase, and rents will never change in the middle of your lease term. So we know that there's going to be more interested in eligible applicants than there are available units. That's why the apartments are being made available using this lottery process to households with annual income at or below 60 or 80% of the AMI for Boston. And like I said, I'm going to share those in just a minute. We've covered a lot of the logistical information and a basic overview of the units at the Wright. So just a reminder, any questions, go ahead and drop them into the chat or unmute yourself. And we're going to talk about eligibility next. All right, so there's 4 eligibility requirements that are listed on page 4 of the income not the income packet, the info packet, the information packet. And the first is that applying households must have qualifying income or asset amount. So we're going to talk a lot more about the income parameters in just a minute, but for this lottery, applicants must have income at or below either the 60% AMI or 80% AMI income limit. The second eligibility item to keep in mind is that household priority is going to be given based on household composition. So for example, if you're a one-person household or a couple who shares a bedroom, you're generally going to be considered a type 1 household. And this is going to be listed on your application. You're going to have to select what household type you are. So a type 1 household can apply for a 2-bedroom unit, but larger type 2 and type 3 households are going to be placed ahead of you on the 2-bedroom waiting list, for example. And some examples of type 2 and type 3 households would be all households with 3 or 4 people, as well as some 2-bedroom household, or sorry, 2-person households. Page 8 of the info pack lists a lot more details on household size and type. But you should be able to see on the application which household type you would qualify for. The third eligibility criteria is that, and this is unique to this lottery as well, so all household members cannot be full-time students. So as an example, this particular lottery is not open to a household who consists of 2 roommates who are both in school full-time. There are exceptions to this eligibility criteria, such as some single parents. So you can check out page 7 of the information packet if you have if you think that every adult in your household is a full-time student, you would need to check out that page and see if you would be an exception and would still be able to apply. The fourth eligibility criteria does not come up very often, but households cannot have financial interest in the development and can't be considered a related party. So if you work for Alliance Residential, which is a company offering these units, or if you work for the Wright in the future, you would not be eligible for this opportunity. All right, to circle back on the first eligibility criteria, which is the income limit. So these are affordable units. Like I said, they're only going to be made available to households at or below the income amounts that we're going to talk about here. They're not going to be made available to market rate households. The units are being made available at rent prices that are lower than identical units within the building. And the maximum income limits are set by household size. So this includes everyone who would be living in the unit with you, would be on the lease. These amounts are listed on the application, the info pack, on our website. They're everywhere. So there's no need to write them down, but just they are on your screen right now. That is there's 2 columns. There's the 60% AMI unit maximum income limit, and then the 80% AMI max income limit. Since there's 2 there, I'm not going to read them out loud, but for example, if you're a 1-person household, you cannot make more than $78,300 as a household to qualify for the unit. And if you make more than the $58,920 that are listed in the 60% column there, you will qualify. If you make between $58,920 that you see there and the $78,300, you're going to qualify for the 80% unit. And just a reminder too that the verification of your income is not required at the time of your lottery application. So you're just submitting the application to let us know that you're interested, you're reporting what your income is, and you'll hear back from us as to whether or not you're eligible for the lottery based on what you reported. When you are found eligible for the lottery, you're going to be sent a documentation requirements guide, and that would be a guide that is going to detail exactly what types of documentation you're going to need to submit if you are selected to move forward following the lottery. And what types of documentation we're going to be looking for, it really depends on your source of income and assets. So if you're working and you're employed, we're going to need a certain number of pay stubs or bank statements from you. If you have bank accounts If you're self-employed, it's going to be something different. But all households, regardless of their income sources, are going to be required to submit copies of your federal tax returns from the last year. So just want to throw that out there because that's something that everyone will need to have on hand. So although you don't need to send in your income verification right now, I do want to give a basic overview about how your income is going to be calculated. So I have that up on the screen now. Income for this program, the Affordable Housing Program, is counted as a projection of your income over the next 12 months. And that's for all household members. So all income from all members is included, and this includes income like bonuses and overtime, things like that. The only exceptions to this are wages earned by minors. So if you have someone in your household who's 16, for example, and they're working, we're not going to count their income towards your total household income. The other exception is that for dependent full-time students who are working, we're only going to count the first $480 of that person's income, that minor's income, or sorry, the full-time student's income when determining your eligibility. We are required to count the gross income that you have, not the net income. So the amount that you make before taxes. We know that you don't take this full amount home of your, the full amount of your salary home, but it is a program requirement. And how we calculate your income isn't one size fits all. So everyone's income circumstances, as I mentioned, are unique. So some applicants have a weekly salary that's consistent throughout the year. You get your pay stub, and that's the amount that you make every week or every 2 weeks. But there are other people who are self-employed or they work seasonally. So in those circumstances, we may need to look further back into the past in order to project anticipated income for the next 12 months. Specifically for applicants who are self-employed, you're going to need to complete a profit and loss statement and provide supporting documentation for your business. And your business expenses are taken into account. But for households who are not self-employed, it is always going to be the gross income that we must count. So in general, any income that you have been making, we're going to assume that you will continue to make it going forward unless we have some sort of definitive documentation stating that you'll no longer be earning that income source. So an example of that might be a written letter from your employer that's stating bonuses and overtime are not going to be paid out this year. And so we know that that income will not be, even if you received it last year, would not be counted this next year. We're not permitted to accept statements from applicants. So for example, if all of the documentation that we have from you is showing that you made $80,000 last year, but you're saying you plan to work far less in the coming year and you'll only be making $50,000, we're still going to need to count that $80,000 as your projected income unless there's something written that we need to consider letting us know that your income for the next year is going to differ from what you made in the last 12 months. So the sources of income that you're going to see listed on the application, just so you don't overlook any of them, you're going to see wages, whether it be from self-employment or wages from an employer. You want to make sure you're writing down any Social Security benefit amounts that you have coming in, SSDI, child support, alimony, retirement distributions, unemployment or workman's compensation, a pension, even periodic payments from friends or family. If they're helping you out, we would need that to be included there. And then any assets that are generating income would be counted as income as well. So there's no minimum income for the Affordable Housing Program. However, most management teams, including the team at the Wright, want to be sure that all tenants can afford their rent amount. So regardless of whether the unit is market rate or affordable, management teams normally want to confirm that you have an income that can support the rent amount. So the management company has set a minimum household income equivalent to 2.5 times the monthly rent. The amounts are listed on the information packet, but just to give you one example, I'm not going to read them all out because they differ for 60% and 80% AMI units. But as an example, if you're looking to rent a studio apartment, the approximate minimum household income for a 60% AMI unit would be $32,300. And the approximate minimum household income for someone looking to rent a studio that's at 80% would be $43,900. Those amounts that I just said and the amounts that are listed, the minimum amounts that are listed on the info pack, can be disregarded by mobile housing voucher holders. So if you have a mobile voucher and you're planning to use it or hoping to use it at the Wright, you can disregard those minimum incomes because they don't apply to you, since your voucher is going to be assisting with the rent amount. So any applicant who does have a mobile housing voucher, you're going to want to check in with the agency that administers your voucher to confirm that the rents at the Wright are within the agency's payment standards or max rents for the program. So if you're a Section 8 voucher holder or MRVP voucher holder, for example, you're going to want to check in just to see if these amounts will work. The leasing office at the Wright is eventually going to confirm that with your housing authority that the rents are permissible, but it would be best for you to know sooner rather than later if the rents are going to work. Applicants without a voucher, though, you must have household incomes between the minimum income floor and the maximum program income limits. The only exception to this is households with incomes just below the minimum income amount. If a household is really close to that minimum income amount but has some liquid assets that you might be able to access to afford the rent, your application might be considered by the leasing office. So the minimum income amounts are not as strictly as enforced as the maximum income limits. Those income limits are a program requirement. So ultimately, it's going to be the decision of the management or leasing office during lease screening whether or not your household meets those minimum income requirements. But the maximum income limits, we would be able to tell you if you qualify for those. There's no asset limit for affordable rental opportunities. So you could have significant assets. You might be retired. You have, a lot of assets added up over the years. You could still be eligible for this opportunity. Although there is no asset limit, we are still going to need to collect information related to your assets. And the reason for that is because if there is income, like I mentioned, generated by those assets, we're going to need to count that income towards your household income. So when you're thinking about assets, you're going to want to not just be writing down checking and savings accounts, but also CDs, the net cash value of any retirement accounts like your 401k or an IRA. We're even going to need to ask for statements for PayPal, Venmo, that sort of thing, and any stocks and bonds. So just keep all that in mind. And most of that is listed on the application, so it'll have a spot for you to write it in. We don't need documents related to personal assets like cars or jewelry, for example. All right, so that covers the eligibility criteria for the housing program and for the lottery. So again, if you have any questions, go ahead and let me know. We're going to move on to the lottery eligibility afterwards. All right. All right, again, if you are interested, you should apply as early as possible just to get the process started. And I also want to mention on your application, if you are interested in more than one unit size, so if you think you might be interested in a studio and a one-bedroom, you should indicate that on your application. There's really no downside to doing that, but there is a potential downside if you only apply to one unit size and then later decide that, I wish I applied to a one-bedroom as well, because we wouldn't be able to, well, you can be placed on the waiting list afterwards, but you'd be behind everyone in the lottery who had applied earlier for that bedroom size. So if you're interested in more than one unit size, go ahead and put that on there. I just want to encourage that. Once you submit the lottery application, we're going to review it and contact you if any information is missing or appears to be incorrect. You'll have a chance to go ahead and correct it and resubmit. If you are found eligible for the lottery, you're going to be sent, usually by email if you provided an email address, you're going to be sent a lottery application number in the form of A.001, for example, it's a series of numbers. this is the number that's going to be drawn in the lottery. It's just meant to be an anonymous identifier so that your name is not called during the actual lottery. It's not a ranking of any sort. It corresponds with the order in which your application was received. So if you were the very first person to submit an application for the Wright and were determined to be eligible, your number is going to be the A.001. The letter that you receive, that email with your number, is also going to confirm whether or not your household qualifies for local preference. So you will have indicated on your application that you believe your household qualifies for this preference, and then the necessary verification would have been submitted along with your application. So local preference might apply to your household if you live in Waltham, if you work for the city, or if you work at a business located within Waltham, or if you are a guardian of a child attending Waltham Public Schools. Up to 70% of the affordable units at the Wright are going to have local preference, which means that some local preference households will get priority for those units compared to households who don't have local preference. And there's more information about local preference can be found on the last page of the information packet. That same email or letter is going to confirm the bedroom size that you've applied for, as well as whether or not you have indicated that you need one of the disabled or hearing impairment accessible units. And again, applicants who are in need of one of those units are going to have priority for them over households who do not require the features of the disabled accessible or hearing accessible units. And then finally, that documentation requirements guide that I mentioned is going to be provided as an attachment to that email that you receive. And the guide is going to provide details on all the items that you're going to need to submit prior to final approval. So after the lottery, if you're one of the top households, it's going to give you more information about what we're going to need. We suggest that you review the guide just so you're aware of what documents are going to be required if you're selected to move forward with reserving a unit following the lottery. It's a lot of information. Can't hurt to have it kind of on standby if you need it. So if you're found to be ineligible for the lottery, for example, if you're over income or you're a related party to the management company, you're going to be informed, and we just do encourage you to contact us with any questions that you might have on your ineligibility. On your application, you will have indicated your household type. So household type 1, 2, or 3 in this case. Smaller households may apply for larger units, but in general, larger households are going to have priority over smaller households on the 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom waiting list. And again, the information packet has a lot more about household types and the priority of the waiting list. But as an example, a type 1 household can apply for a 2-bedroom unit, but all type 2 and 3 households are going to have priority over a type 1 household on the 2-bedroom waiting list. And that means that they're going to have the larger households are going to have higher positions on the waiting list, and all of the type 1 households will be below those larger households. And that's just for the 2-bedroom and 3 bedrooms. If you're applying for a 1-bedroom unit, everyone would have the same priority, assuming it's not local preference. So the lottery itself is going to be held on November 7th. It's going to be the same format as this information session. Numbers will either be drawn from a box, or if we have a lot of applicants, which we are expecting, it may be done digitally. We'll share a screen with you so you can see how the numbers are randomized, and we'll record the results. Every lottery number is going to be drawn or picked during the lottery. So sometimes we think of lotteries, we think of there's just one winner, or in this case, there's 49 winners. But the purpose of this lottery is more to establish an order of the waiting list. So in general, it is beneficial if your number is called earlier in the lottery, but it may not necessarily be the deciding factor on whether or not you'll be moving forward in the process to lease one of the units at the Wright. Since we first need to sort the results by the priorities that I've mentioned, so the household size and the local preference. So for example, if a type 1 household is drawn first in the lottery, they're still going to be behind all type 2 households on a 2-bedroom waiting list if they applied for that unit size. And then also households who were entered into the lottery might be found ineligible by the leasing office once the time comes, or may ultimately decide not to rent a unit. So if your number is drawn later in the lottery, you shouldn't lose hope as to whether or not you're going to be able to rent one of these units. You might still have the opportunity to move forward in the process. So keep that in mind. So following the lottery, we're going to populate the waiting list, and we're going to take local preference and whether or not you require a disabled accessible unit into consideration. Typically, we send you the results by email no later than the morning after the lottery. And the list will be sent to all applicants by email if we have your email address. When you're reviewing that email address, you're going to find your lottery application number. You're going to see where you fall on the waiting list. So at that point, once you get that email after the lottery, you'll have a better idea of whether or not you might be invited to move forward for the next step in the process, which is to apply for a lease with the leasing office. So following the lottery, we're going to connect you with the management team, and your contact information is going to be provided to them, and you're going to be given their contact information. This is a step that might be delayed if they don't yet have their leasing staff in place because of the construction delays. So after the lottery on November 7th, you may not hear from us until the middle of or late December. So there might be like a month lag there, as I mentioned. So just a heads up on that. But once we do connect you, you will have the leasing office's contact information. They'll have yours, and you can coordinate coming in for a tour and seeing the available affordable units, and you would begin that lease screening process. So SEB Housing screens for lottery and program eligibility. Where we have not screened your household for lease eligibility, the leasing office is going to do that. And like I said, this might include a credit check, a background check, a rental history check to determine if you're eligible to rent with them. You should be aware that the leasing office may invite more households to complete their lease screening than there are available units. So for example, at the Wright, there are 5 1-bedroom 60% AMI affordable units. But they may choose to invite 10 or more households from the waiting list to complete the lease screening. This is common. Management companies do this often because the process of leasing units is slowed down by households who don't qualify or decide they don't want to rent units. So for this reason, if you're a household, that's 10th down the waiting list, you may be contacted to move forward. And you may or may not at that point have the opportunity to rent a unit. And so this is one of the reasons even if you're the first household on the waiting list, you don't want to immediately give notice to your current landlord if you're renting somewhere now, because you have not yet been lease approved by the management company. And then we at SEB Housing are also still going to need to collect and review your income, asset, and tax documentation. So just a heads up on that. Even if you're number 1 in the lottery, there's still a few more steps in the process. So once you are approved by the leasing office, this is the point where having a position near the top of the waiting list is beneficial to you. If you're the top household on the list, you're going to have the first chance to reserve an affordable unit. So if you have the top position on the 1-bedroom 80% AMI waiting list, for example, you're going to have the first choice in reserving one of those affordable 1-bedroom units. This is true even if another applicant, maybe who's positioned behind you on the waiting list, happens to complete their lease eligibility with the management office before you do. You're going to be able to tour and make the decision based on whatever factors are important to you. Maybe the unit that you're most interested in has what you feel is the best location in the building, or it has a move-in date that works for your family. So just keep that in mind. Then after the first person has reserved a unit, the second person on the waiting list is going to have the second choice at the remaining units. and so on. So once you have reserved an affordable unit, the leasing office is going to notify us at SEB, and we're going to then contact you to submit the income, asset, and tax documentation that we've been talking about. And that's required in order for us to do your final program eligibility review. So hopefully by this point, you've been able to review that documentation requirements guide, and you've started to gather all that documentation needed for your final review. You're going to have about 10 days to from the date that you have reserved your unit to get all of that supporting documentation into SEB Housing. There's a lot of information to submit, like I mentioned, but even if you don't provide everything on the first chance, you will be given a incomplete notice, and you will be allowed a second and possible third chance if you're not able to get everything into us. So it's not a one-shot deal. No worries if you're not able to get everything in on the first try. So once SEB Housing approves your file, it's going to be sent to the Massachusetts Housing Partnership, MHP. They are the subsidizing agency for these units at the Wright. Once MHP approves your file, we're going to notify you, and eligible households will then be able to sign leases and establish a move-in date with the leasing office. Our program certifications at SEB, they're good for 6 months. So if for any reason you complete your application process and then you're not signing a lease for 6 months after that for whatever reason, you might need to submit updated income documentation. Just wanted to mention that just in case that happens. But like I said, we're going to be delaying the application process. And I think the units are supposed to be available pretty soon after we start the process. So this probably won't be applicable to you. So once the lease is signed, you're done with screenings until the lease renewal date. We hope that you love your unit at the Wright and you want to continue living there beyond the first year. And if you do, you're going to need to recertify your income since it is an affordable unit with the management company prior to your lease renewal. So if your income has increased and is now above that 60 to 80% of AMI, that's fine. You could still qualify for the affordable housing unit. The households would just need to remain, you would remain eligible for the affordable housing apartment as long as your household income does not exceed 140% of that current year's 60 or 80% AMI. So page 16 of the info pack lists those 140% figures for the different household sizes, but just to give you an idea of it, a household size of a household of two people would have qualified for an 80% AMI unit through the lottery with an income at or below $89,500. That same family can make up to $125,300 at the time of the recertification in order to remain eligible to rent the affordable apartment. So it's a decent income increase there that would still qualify you for the affordable unit, thankfully. So that covers everything that I wanted to mention from the information packet and just from the information that we have on the Wright. Again, you can find the lottery application for the affordable units at the Wright on our website, and the information packet is there as well. Questions that you might have after tonight, if you don't have anything right now, you can contact us at info@sebhousing.com or the number that's in the chat. But does anybody have a question before I let you go? If not, we just encourage you to get your application in, and we will get back to you if anything is missing. All right, again, if not, just encourage you to reach out if you have any questions after tonight, and take a look at the Wright's website and our listing for the Wright on our webpage to get the process started. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.